expect you to behave. Here's how you treat strangers. Here's how a woman behaves when she hosts people. Here's how a young lady addresses an older man. Here's how an older man treats a younger woman, etc., etc. There's these repeated scenes, all not just telling you the way they want you to act, but demonstrating it in a dramatic form. And so that call for him to disguise himself. And there's huge dramatic irony building here, because Odysseus, who's the lord of Ithaca, the king, if you will, has to disguise himself as a beggar in order to complete his nostos. Nobody knows where he is. 20 years. That's where we began the epic. When he finally gets there, he can't even reveal himself. He has to continue more or less like he was in Book 5 on the island of Calypso. He has to be hidden until it's time. And then the right moment is there. The kairos. By the way, this kairos, this right time, is used in Scripture, but it's a term that the sophists use. You got to prepare people when you're speaking, and then it's the right time to make your point. You don't just go directly there. You set the stage. You prepare until your audience is ready, and then bang, now you present the truth or your main point. So he has to wait until that time. And he tests the people in beggar's guise. So he's going to, because this is a subverted kingdom, remember I said this, everything's been turned upside down. It is now a kingdom of injustice. When he left, it was just. The king is gone and anarchy now reigns. Just like when what Poseidon did to the earth, he shook it. His kingdom has been shaken up in his absence. And now he's going to come as a beggar in order to see, how have people acted in my absence? If Odysseus is there, they're going to pretend. They're going to dissemble. They're going to say, oh, Odysseus, how wonderful to see you. And they'll be on their best behavior. But if he comes in as a beggar from outside of Ithaca, how are they going to treat him? Will they show him hospitality as they ought to? Or will they continue in their behavior? And he doesn't know that. And he wants to make sure that he tests them all. So he is going to disguise himself, and he starts with the very lowliest character of all. And I want to spend some time looking at this character because I think he's fascinating. His name is Eumaeus. And he is a swineherd. He looks after he's a pig farmer. He's on the lowest rung of the ladder of the social hierarchy in Ithaca. He was, by the way, a king's son, and this is interesting as well. But he was enslaved in battle. Now, I could say something about slavery, but the ancient world totally depends on slavery. It's not a racial thing, by the way. When we think of slavery, we automatically think of European slavery, the 17th, 18th, 19th century, sort of. It's not a racial thing. It's more of the result of battle. That's it. So if your nation goes into battle and you defeat the other army, they become your slaves. And Eumaeus is the son of a former king, but now he has become, his life is as bad as it gets. He's Odysseus's slave. He looks after his pigs. I guess it's not as bad as it gets because he looks after the pigs. He's trustworthy in that. And so how is he going to act? Because he would have good reason to be very bitter about his lot in life, quite frankly. Son of a king now looks after pigs and is abused in the kingdom in his master's absence. He's been away 20 years. How will he act? How will he act? That's what we're going to explore first. So what we find, and this is what's so touching, is that Eumaeus has acted like a father figure to Telemachus, the king's son. In the father's absence, this man has taken care of the king. He's had pity upon him. And his lot. He lost his own father in battle. He could be bitter. He could be spiteful. He could take some sort of revenge. He does the opposite. He's faithful to him, faithful to Odysseus. And so much so, and we talked about this in the break, that there's that, where's that passage where he cries out, do you know the section we were? Okay, there is multiple places. So there are multiple places in the narrative where a voice comes in and he calls him my swineherd. Where are these? Don't know if I'm going to find this or not. Let's see here. See if I can find a section here. Eumaeus the swineherd, so section 14. He spoke to him there. Odysseus does. Odysseus and he are having a dialogue back and forth, and Odysseus, I'll give you the lines from Odysseus and then I'll read Eumaeus' response. This is line 161, book 14. Sometime within this very year, Odysseus will be here, says Odysseus, either at the waning of the moon or at its onset. He will come home and take his vengeance here upon any who deprives his wife and his glorious son of their due honor. Then, O swineherd Eumaeus, you said to him in answer. Who's the person speaking and calling him you here? Homer. Homer intrudes on the narrative. Up to this point, Homer has allowed the muse to speak, but Homer personally interjects into the narrative to speak of Eumaeus and address him directly. Why does he do this? Why does Homer intrude upon the narrative and let us know that he's there speaking? Because he's so moved by the character of the man. He has to praise him. He comes out. It's Homer, not the muse. He's so pleased with him. What does he say? Old sir, I will never pay you that gift for good news, nor will Odysseus come to his house again. Be easy and drink your wine. We will think of other matters. Do not then keep on reminding me of this, for the heart within me grieves whenever anyone speaks of my gracious master. So we will let your oath alone, but I hope that Odysseus will come back, as I wish, and as Penelope wishes, and Laertes, the old man too, and godlike Telemachus. But now I grieve unforgettingly for Telemachus, the son born to Odysseus. The gods made him grow like a young tree, and I thought he would be among the men one not inferior to his dear father, admirable for build and beauty. But some immortal upset the balanced mind within him, or else it was some man. He went after news of his father to Pylos the sacrosanct, and the haughty suitors are lying in wait for him as he comes home, to make Argos' stock and seeds perish all away and be nameless in Ithaca. They will blot out his name. There will be no one left to remind us that Odysseus was king there. Odysseus is gone, and now his son will be gone, and his name will be blotted out. He will be nameless. He will have no possibility of fame. This is a terrible thing. Now we will let him be, however, whether they catch him or whether he escapes and the son of Cronos protects him, that is Zeus. But come now, good sir, recite me the tale of your sorrows, and tell me this, too. Tell me truly, so that I may know it. What man are you, and whence? Where is your city, your parents? What kind of ship did you come here on? And how did the sailors bring you to Ithaca? What men do they claim that they are? For I do not think you could have traveled on foot to this country. And then the resourceful Odysseus spoke to him and answered him. And then, of course, spins out a lie about where he came from, how he got there. But he says that he's the son of a rich man. Oh, you mean like Eumaeus, son of a king? So he's going to draw analogies there to get under his guard, etc. But that exchange there, and while he's doing this, he claims to be a veteran of the Battle of Troy, who came to grief in Egypt, and he's had some news of Odysseus on his way home. So he's giving him a little bit of true information. The false information is that, of course, he is actually or Odysseus. Now, Eumaeus is not doesn't accept the tale as truthful. He's highly skeptical of it. But he doesn't say, you're a liar. So this is interesting. Again, if you think about hospitality, your visitor is telling you something. The host is not really believing everything that he's hearing. That's good. He's using discernment. This is an important tool to employ at all times. But at the same time, he does not dispense with hospitality. He still owes him hospitality, and he still shows him hospitality. He gives him his own bed. It's the best he can do. Gives him his best. And at that point, he then moves on and tests other characters. And there's a series there. Telemachus, the scene shifts in book 15 to Telemachus and Menelaus. Remember, we left off Telemachus and Menelaus in book 3, I believe. He went there to find out about him, and he says, you know what, I need to go back home now. Athena is orchestrating all of this in the background, of course. Okay, I need to go back home now. Asks Menelaus to go. He's courteous. He's given gifts by Menelaus as well. Now, the gifts are a part of his fame. The gifts are a sign and a symbol of his repute, of his high standing. So he has physically and spiritually and morally improved by going out on a voyage. And he's learned things as well. And the dialogue has encouraged him about his father's good character. And the possibility that he might be alive has been awoken in him. And Helen gives a prophecy, of, as it were. And let me read that to you. This is line 173. Hear me, I shall be your prophet, the way the immortals put it into my heart. And I think it will be accomplished. As this eagle came down from the mountain, where was his origin and parentage, and caught the goose that was nursed in the household, so Odysseus, after wandering long and suffering much, will come home and take revenge. Or he is already home and making a plan of evil for all of the suitors. Then the thoughtful Telemachus said to her in answer, May Zeus, high thundering husband of Hera, so appoint it. But even at home I would make my prayers to you as to a goddess. He spoke and laid the lash on his horses, and they very quickly, with the eager spirit, dashed away to the plain through the city. So Helen, who started the whole war of Troy, has now been given a gift of prophecy to foretell that Odysseus is either coming home or he's already home. Now, this is the means the gods use. They reveal things, and Telemachus has now heard good omens, and he is encouraged by this prospect. So these are all means that Athena is using to test and prepare Odysseus, but also to test and prepare his son Telemachus. Because remember, the boy has to become a man, and he will become a man by being more like his father. He will imitate him. But he hasn't been able to see him in person, so it's going to happen through other means. And Athena has brought this about. Now, the ideal would be to be at his father's side, and he will end up at his father's side when they face the suitors together. But for now, he is being prepared absent from his father. And I will carry on. The story of life story of Eumaeus, if you're interested in, is book 15, line 351 and onwards. How he got there to where he is. But we will pick it up in book 16. Now Telemachus has come home. And when he comes home, who does he find together but Odysseus and Eumaeus? Now, this is interesting. Odysseus and the noble swineherd, it says in book 16. And Telemachus comes to them, and I'll read from this. section about the dogs, because I think this is interesting. Line 3 of Book 16. At this time, the clamorous dogs came fawning around Telemachus, nor did they bark at him as he came. And great Odysseus noticed that the dogs were fawning. Above them he heard the loud noise of the footsteps. Immediately he spoke in winged words to Eumaeus. Eumaeus, someone is on his way here who is truly one of yours, or else well known, since the dogs are not barking, but fawning about him. And I can hear the thud of his footsteps. Now he notices this, but remember, if he clapped eyes on Telemachus, he would not know who he was. He's never seen him. He was born in his absence, right? He's never seen his son. Now he would look at him, and I guess he looks a lot like him, but still, he does not know. So he notices that the dogs don't bark at him. They recognize who he is. Who might this be? Well, his heart's probably pounding in his chest. Who might this be? And his whole word had not been spoken when his beloved son stood in the forecourt. Amazed, the swineherd started up, and the vessels where he had been busily mixing the bright wine fell from his hand. He's so shocked he drops the wine. He came up to meet his master and kissed his head and kissed too his beautiful shining eyes. And both his hands and the swelling tear fell from him. And as a father, note the epic simile here, and the epic simile adds richness and sometimes tension. They're used for a variety of reasons, but they're features of all epics, these extended similes. And as a father, now this is not Odysseus, this is Eumaeus. As a father with heart full of love welcomes his only and grown son, for whose sake he has undergone many hardships when he comes back in the 10th year from a distant country, so now the noble swineherd, clinging fast to godlike Telemachus, kissed him even as if he had escaped dying. The man acts like Odysseus would, and Odysseus is right beside him, and Odysseus has to pretend he is unmoved by the whole thing. Now this is hard stuff. He has to remain dispassionate, disinterested, while the swineherd acts like he himself would like to act. This is not easy. Restraining himself. And in a burst of weeping, he spoke to him in winged words. You have come, Telemachus, sweet light. I thought I would never see you again when you'd gone in the ship to Pylos, but come now into the house, dear child, so that I can pleasure my heart with looking at you again when you are inside. For you do not come very often to the estate and the herdsman, but you stay in town, since now it seems you are even minded to face the deadly company of the lordly suitors. Then the thoughtful Telemachus said to him in answer, So shall it be, my father. But it was for your sake I came here, to look upon you with my eyes, and to hear a word from you, whether my mother endures still in the halls, or whether some other man has married her. Note that he's now testing. He's not even sure about his mother. And he's come to Eumaeus to find out. That's interesting as well. You want to go to the truth? Don't ask the people in the high places. Start with the word on the streets. What are the people in the grassroots saying? What are they saying? Because they've got nothing to gain by dissembling. People in positions of power don't tell the truth. They have something to lose. They have, phrase these days, skin in the game. He has nothing to lose, and he trusts him, so he goes straight to him. Has some other man married her? And the bed of Odysseus lies forlorn of sleepers with a spider webs grown upon it. Then in turn the swineherd, leader of men, said to him, All too much with enduring heart she does wait for him, there in your own palace, and always with her the wretched nights in your own and the days also waste her away with weeping. So we find that Penelope has been faithful. What is the means by which she is able to be faithful? Deceit, trickery, craft. This word, dolos, deceit. It's characteristic of women. It's a womanly way of dealing with things. It's characteristic of Athena. It's also characteristic of Odysseus. So, further homecoming, and it's very touching. It's brilliantly handled by Homer, I think. And eventually, let me come to line 300 here. Where Telemachus then speaks to the visitor, who is actually his real father. I'll pick it up at 263. Thoughtful Telemachus said to Odysseus in answer, "Those indeed are two excellent helpers you name to me, Athena and Zeus, even though they sit high away in the clouds, for they have power over others besides, over mortal men and the gods immortal." Then in turn, long-suffering great Odysseus answered him, "These are two who will not for a long time stay far off from the strong battle. At that time when the war god's decision is fought out in our halls between ourselves and the suitors. But now, as for you, you must make your way, when dawn shows, back to our house and be with the group of insolent suitors." By the way, I guess I skipped over. I thought I had it, but I think I've got the wrong passage. Odysseus, yes, there it is, sorry, 187, just for your notes. "Who are you? Are you a god? No, I am not a god. Why liken me to the immortals? But I am your father, for whose sake you are always grieving, and as you look for violence from others and endure hardships." He spoke and kissed his son, and the tears running down his cheeks splashed on the ground. Until now, he was always unyielding, but Telemachus, for he did not yet believe that this was his father, spoke to him once again in answer, saying, note that he doesn't trust. Because remember, the gods can disguise themselves. This could be a god trying to trick him. "No, you are not Odysseus, my father, but some divinity beguiles me, so that I must grieve the more and be sorry. For no man who was mortal could ever have so contrived it by his own mind alone, not unless some immortal descending on him in person were likely to make him a young or an old man. For even now you were an old man in unseemly clothing, but now you resemble one of the gods who hold wide heaven." Well, that's because Athena has revealed him and made him look better. This is another thing Athena does. He makes Telemachus look bigger and stronger and more impressive than he was, and she does likewise with Odysseus. Remember, when we first met him on the land of the Phaeacians, he was beaten down, covered in brine, scary, but so worn that the Phaeacians said he's an old man, he probably can't fight anymore. Right? And then there's the test, and he throws the discus and all that. You know, you're looking a little long in the tooth, probably not up to this sort of thing anymore. And Athena sets this glory upon him so that he shines, and so much so here that he cannot believe this is his father. You look a little bit too good. So he doesn't believe it, Telemachus, and thinks that he must be a god, or the help of gods, and the second is correct. So he's guessed it already. And Odysseus speaks in turn and answers him, "Telemachus, it does not become you to wonder too much at your own father when he is here, nor doubt him. No other Odysseus than I will ever come back to you. But here I am, and I am as you see me, and after hardships and suffering, much I have come, in the 20th year, back to my own country. But here you see the work of Athena, the giver of plunder, who turns me into whatever she pleases, since she can do this. And now she will make me look like a beggar. But then, the next time, like a young man, and wearing splendid clothes on my body. It is a light thing for the gods who hold wide heaven to glorify any mortal man, or else to degrade him." It's easy for her to disguise me. Hence the need for men to discern and to question, and themselves to disguise their intentions, because the gods do it. And the gods are in some ways hostile to humanity. They're not. Because wherever human beings gain in glory, the gods lose it. It's a zero-sum game. You have to realize this. there's almost a jealousy there on behalf of the gods towards men. I'm not quite sure why that is, other than that they seek after glory, which is the gods' own thing. And so if they're going to gain glory, they better be propitious towards the gods. They better make a lot of sacrifices. Thank the gods at all times for all things, because otherwise the gods will be angry for the glory that's been given to them, which they claim as their own. So he reveals them, and now Telemachus folded his great father in his arms and lamented, shedding tears, and desire for mourning rose in both of them, and they cried shrill in a pulsing voice, even more than the outcry of birds, ospreys, or vultures with hooked claws, whose children were stolen away by the men of the fields, before their wings grew strong. Such was their pitiful cry, and the tears their eyes wept. And now the light of the sun would have set on their crying, had not Telemachus spoke a quick word to his father. What kind of a ship was it? But they are beside themselves. They're weeping. And the pain and the purging of all the suffering through that expression of pain. So Odysseus' identity has been revealed to Telemachus, and then they start to make their plans. Now that they're reunited and both have been prepared by Athena, they have to deal with the problem of the suitors, but they're going to do it together, father and son. We don't question Odysseus' valor in battle because the Trojan War. But Telemachus we don't know about. And how are two men going to defeat 100 suitors? How is that even possible? So they will have to plot and scheme. And they do precisely that. And one of the things that they do is they send, the suitors are also waiting for Telemachus. So Antinous, one of the suitors, plans to murder him. So this is a threat there. Or at least he proposes that they do it, and one of the other suitors vetoes him on this. And Eumaeus comes back, and then I'll come to book 16. But the two of them don't come back together, they come separately. If they came together, the beggar would have status because he's with the king's son. Why would the king's son have a beggar that looks awfully big and awfully like him? Now, I guess he could be disguised and bent over and so forth, but they decide it's a better strategy to go separately, independently, and they do so. And they're told, Telemachus is told to test people while he's there, and Odysseus does the same. The testing takes place before the fight. As important as defeating the suitors is to figure out who has been unjust. Who has been unjust? Because remember, the restoration of Odysseus isn't just the return home of the man, it's the return of justice. He in his person represents justice. This is Homer's message, is that a true leader will always, if he is a true leader and a good one, be just. And so he is going to be just in all of his ways. Now, where will I pick this up? What we find here, and this strikes me a little bit, Odysseus is there to discern who has been faithful and who has been unfaithful to him. Athena doesn't seem so careful about this. She says he's going to kill all the suitors, and it doesn't matter whether some of them have been better than others. It doesn't matter. We're going to kill them all, says Athena. Odysseus is minded maybe to discern this and maybe to spare some of them. Athena says, we're going to kill them all. Now, this is the judgment from the gods. Why would that be? I don't know, because I'll come to the end of it. I'll say it right now in case I don't get to it at the end. When they slaughter them all, then they have the problem with their families. And the families are many, and they've lost all their sons. So what do you think they're going to want? Vengeance. And Odysseus will not be able to hold them off. He might have been able to surprise the suitors and kill them all, but he can't stop their families from vengeance. The gods have to intervene to stop it. That's what happens. The gods intervene, they come in, and they stop the fighting. So if you go back to the Iliad, the Iliad begins with a dispute among the gods over who was the most beautiful, by the way. There were 3 goddesses, and there was a dispute over who was the most beautiful. They asked Paris, which one of us? And they offer him rewards based on what he chooses. He says that it is Venus, the goddess of love. And she promises him the most beautiful woman in the world if he should choose her. He does choose her. As a result, the other 2 goddesses are furious. And Helen is taken with him back to Troy, but then the other goddesses want vengeance. So it all began with a quarrel amongst the gods. And the gods are going to have to settle it. So just to give you some background there. That's not even told at the beginning of the Iliad. It's stuck somewhere in book 17 or 18. So just a little snippet of information there. But the gods will have to settle it here. But so Athena, it seems more bloodthirsty than even than Odysseus was minded to be. Again, one of the reasons why Homer says that the portrait of the gods is outrageous. Like they're worse than men. More unjust. How can this possibly be? Okay. Still with me? Let me come to book 17. The beggar comes in to the hall, and interestingly, he's challenged by another beggar. Maybe he's worried about his place in the court. I don't know if you've ever seen this, people around the city begging for food, whatever, money, and there's a fight amongst them because if I stand in this place, more people pass by, so the stronger one wants to push out the new guy. And so he is challenged by the beggar. Now, this is a symbol of how unjust the kingdom has become, that the beggar is going to take him on. And Odysseus, so the beggar's name is Eros, picks a fight with him. Now, this is one of the moments when Odysseus is almost revealed, because they do have a fight and Odysseus knocks him out. He hits him so hard, he flies off the ground and knocks him out cold. And the suitors are like, that was the beggar, and that was quite the punch. And how is that? Like, this guy may not be who he appears to be. So he's revealed himself a bit by his anger. There's another even more famous passage in which he is revealed, and I want to come to that. I think it's in, yes, it is. Odysseus tells the lie to his wife of how he got there. He said he entertained Odysseus while he was abroad, by the way, and so he's spinning out this yarn about how he got there. And he meets at this point, this is in book 18. Book 18, no, 19, sorry. Book 19, he meets his wife, and his wife doesn't recognize who he is, and he's telling her a story about Odysseus, and she doesn't believe him that Odysseus was even alive, because again, remember, if somebody's suffering from such intense trauma, they can't possibly hope to have hope, because she has nothing left. If that hope is taken away from her, she will die of heartbreak. She can't cope with it, so she just says, he's not alive, stop. I don't believe it. I won't believe it. And he confronts this. This is realism, I think, in fiction. But he meets a nurse whose name is Eurycleia. Now, this is an old woman, because as it turns out, it was Odysseus's nursemaid. She nursed him when he was a boy, when he was a child. And now this nurse is the handmaiden of Penelope, so she remains in Penelope's household. And I'll pick up with some of Penelope's words. She says to Odysseus, if only this word, line 309, stranger and guest were brought to fulfillment, that Odysseus is coming home. Soon you would be aware of my love and many gifts given by me, so any man who met you would call you blessed. But here is the way I think in my mind, and the way it will happen. Odysseus will never come home again. Nor will you be given conveyance, for there are none to give orders left in the household, such as Odysseus was among men, if he ever existed, for receiving respected strangers and sending them off on their journeys. But come, handmaidens, give him a wash and spread a couch for him here with bedding and coverlets with the shining blankets, so that he can keep warm as he waits for dawn of the golden throne. And early tomorrow you will give him a bath, anoint him, so that he can sit in the hall beside Telemachus and expect to dine there. Hospitality. Is a beggar from abroad and he's going to sit and dine with the prince at his table? This is terrific hospitality. That's what the plan is. And she begins by washing his feet. Where shall we go this? The old woman speaks to him. And what does she say? 363. Because she says, you look a lot like Odysseus. You know, you look a lot like Odysseus. And he says to her, everybody says that. Yeah, everybody says that. It's funny that you should say that. And she says, Penelope says to Euryclea, rise up and wash the feet of one who is the same age as your master. Odysseus must by this time have just such hands and feet as you do. For in misfortune mortal men grow old more suddenly. So he spoke. And the old woman covered her face in her hands and shed hot tears and spoke to him in words of compassion. How helpless I am to help you, my child. Surely Zeus hated you beyond all other men, though you had a godly spirit. For no man among mortals ever has burned so many thigh pieces to Zeus, who delights in the thunder, nor given so many choice and grand sacrifices as you prayed you might come to a sleek old age and raise your glorious son to manhood. For you now alone he took away your day of homecoming. Only Odysseus was not allowed to return home. The Nostos has been deprived of him, and with it his glory. So it must be for him also that in the houses of far-off friends, whose famous homes he enters, the women tease him, as now these sluts are all teasing you, stranger, and it is to avoid their abuse and shameful speaking, you will not let them wash your feet. But circumspect Penelope, daughter of Icarius, told me to do it, nor am I unwilling, so I shall wash your feet, both for the sake of Penelope, but also for yourself, since the heart is stirred within me by sorrows. But come, attend to me in the word I tell you. There have been many hard traveling strangers who've come here, but I say I have never seen one as like as you are to Odysseus, both as to your feet and voice and appearance. Then resourceful Odysseus spoke in turn and answered her. So say all, old dame, who with their eyes have looked upon the two of us. They say, we two are very similar each to each, as you yourself have noticed, and tell me. So he spoke. And the old woman took up the shining basin she used for foot washing, poured in a great deal of water, the cold first, then she added the hot. Now Odysseus was sitting close to the fire, but suddenly turned to the dark side, not the force, where it's harder to see. Turned to the dark side, for presently he thought in his heart that, as she handled him, she might be aware of his scar, and all his story might come out. She came up close and washed her lord, and at once she recognized that scar, which once the boar with his white tusk had inflicted on him when he went to Parnassus, to Autolycus and his children. Who's Autolycus? It's Penelope's father, who was a thief, by the way. This was his mother's noble father, who surpassed all men in thievery and the art of oath. And the god Hermes himself had endowed him, because Hermes is also a thief, as well as the messenger of the gods. For he had pleased him by burning the thigh bones of lambs and kids. And now we're going to hear the story of how he got the scar. So there's this moment when Odysseus is about to be revealed against his will. His time is not right. This is not his kairos moment. He's not ready. He's supposed to reveal himself when he's alone with the suitors. Now he's going to be revealed to Eurycleia, and through Eurycleia to Penelope, and they will not be able to withhold their response. They won't be able to hold it together. And the game will be up. It's Odysseus, he's home. And the suitors will say, oh, really? And then they will marshal themselves and they'll kill him. So the threat is real. And with the suspense having built, what does Homer do? He goes on this long-winded digression of how he came to get this scar. And he got it when he was a boy. And a boar came at him. He was out on a hunt with his grandfather, his mom's dad. And a boar, when you think of a boar, what do you think of when you think of a boar, by the way? What's it look like? How big is it?
Ugly.
Yeah, they're ugly. But how big?
Pig.
It's a big pig. Pigs eat, by the way, everything, including human flesh. They eat everything. They're omnivores. And they'll eat people. But a boar is a fearsome creature. It's got tusks like this long, like razors. They'll cut you straight through. And they range somewhere between 300 and 800 pounds when they're full grown. Now think about that. Rushing out at you, and they have a bad temper. They have a bad temperament. So much so that J.R.R. Tolkien's son, Christopher, has an estate in France to this day, and he has a lot of wild boars on it to deal with all of the people that want to come, the Tolkien fans who want to get and talk to him about his dad's works and stuff like that. He's got wild boars all around, which I think is interesting. So if you remember that passage in The Lord of the Rings, when Frodo is hit with the spear in his vest, which is mithril, deflects it, and he said that spear would have skewered a wild boar. You think, so what? Well, its hide is thick, its tusks are sharp and really hard to kill. And Odysseus is a young boy, and he's out on the hunt, and he's separated from his grandfather and the rest of them, and he's on his own. And the boar rushes out. I'm gonna kill this kid. And Odysseus kills the boar, part of his fame. But he gets, for his pains, the boar's tusks go through his leg. So he has a large scar on his leg. And the nurse, of course, knows all about this. So she tells this tale of how, and there's the suspense is rising. Okay, so here's how he got the scar, but what's going to happen next? And we have to wait for pages. Now this recounting of Odysseus' scar is a famous one. It's a scene of recognition, this word that Aristotle used, anagnorisis, a recognition scene. Agnorisis. So there are 2 pages of detail about how he acquired the scar, and they build the dramatic tension and heighten the suspense. And the identity of Odysseus is revealed by something that was once a source of his pain. It's poetic, indeed, that Odysseus, who is so renowned for his bearing of suffering and pain, and part of his suffering and pain is he can't reveal his identity, is revealed by a symbol of his suffering and pain to his nurse. Terrific stuff. And so the nurse, finally, the old woman, 467, holding him in the palm of her hands, recognized this scar as she handled it. She let his foot go so that his leg, which was in the basin, fell free, and the bronze echoed. The basin tipped over on one side, and the water spilled out on the floor. Pain and joy seized her at once, and both eyes filled with tears, and the springing voice was held within her. She took the beard of Odysseus in her hands and spoke to him. Then, dear child, you are really Odysseus. I did not know you before, not until I had touched my lord all over. She spoke and turned her eyes towards Penelope, wishing to indicate to her her beloved husband's presence, but Penelope was not able to look that way or perceive him, since Athena turned aside her perception. Odysseus, while with the other, he pulled her closer to him, said to her, "Nurse, why are you trying to kill me?" You yourself suckled me at your own breast. But now at last, after suffering much, I have come in the 20th year back to my own country. But now that you have learned who I am, and the God put it into your mind, hush, let nobody else in the palace know of it. For so I tell you straight out, and it will be a thing accomplished if you do, and by my hands the God beats down the arrogant suitors. Nurse of mine though you are, I will not spare you when I kill the rest of the serving maids in my palace. He has to threaten her because her got a loose tongue. She loves him, that's plain, but will she be able to hold the secret in? He has to threaten her. It's not a particularly comforting scene, but he has to threaten her to keep her quiet, and of course she's hurt by this. My child, what sort of word escaped your teeth's barrier? You know what strength is steady in me, and it will not give way at all. But I shall hold as stubborn as stone or iron, and put away in your heart this other thing that I tell you. If by your hands the God beats down the arrogant suitors, then I will give you the list of those women who in your palace have been mutinous against you, and tell you which are innocent. Okay, so I'll be the snitch, and I'll tell you who the naughty maids are. Now, does he say, okay, you're on my side, I'll accept your word? He does not. Why not? Because he doesn't trust her character. He's going to figure it out for himself. Maybe she'll just tell him because there's some young women whom she doesn't like, and she'll name them. Just because she loves him doesn't mean she's of good character across the board. So he will not trust her. And he says to her, Nurse, why should you tell me of them? There is no need to. I myself will properly study each and learn of each. Leave it to the gods and keep the story in silence. Okay, so this great scene of recognition and the revelation of his identity, identified by that scar which he received at a very painful moment in his youth. And now he comes back a man full of scars and full of pain and full of glory. But his time is not ready. So until that moment, he will do what the goddess Athena has told him to do. One other scene, I skipped over this, but I'm going to go back to it because it's so famous and it's so touching at that. This is in 17, and it's line 300 thereabouts. Let me come to this. There's another recognition scene. Yeah, I think it's 17. Have I got this right? It's the dog. Where is this? Maybe it's back in 16 or even 15.
There's something about a dog in 17.
It's 17.
300.
300. Yeah, okay. I thought I had it. Yeah, okay. So let's go to that very briefly. So there are scenes of possible recognition. And note that it's the lowliest that seem to recognize him first. Like he reveals himself to Telemachus, but others find out his identity on their own. And chiefly this dog. Where is it? Is it 17,300? I've got it as line 317, but that can't be right.
300, it says, there the dog Argos laying.
Oh, I'm on 18, that's why.
Laying the dog.
That's why. Yes. So 300. The servants of it, there the dog Argos, thank you. Lay in the dung. I had the wrong book, that's why. All covered with dog ticks. So he's getting bitten by ticks and lying in the dung. Now, as he perceived that Odysseus had come close to him, no, I need to go back because you have to set the stage here. He says, what's with this dog? These two were conversing, that's line 290, with each other. A dog was lying there with his head and ears. This was Argos, patient-hearted Odysseus' dog, whom he himself raised, but got no joy of him, since before that he went to sacred Ilion. In the days before, the young men had taken him out to follow goats of the wild and deer and rabbits, but now he had been put aside, with his master absent, and lay on the deep pile of dung from the mules and oxen which lay abundant before the gate, so that the servants of Odysseus could take it to his great estate for manuring. There the dog Argos lay in the dung, all covered with dog ticks. Now as he perceived that Odysseus had come close to him, he wagged his tail and laid both his ears back. Only he now no longer had the strength to move any closer to his master, who, watching him from a distance, without Eumaeus noticing, secretly wiped a tear away, and said to him, Eumaeus, this is amazing, this dog that lies on the dunghill. The shape of him is splendid, and yet I cannot be certain whether he had the running speed to go with his beauty, or is just one of the kind of table dog that gentlemen keep, and it is only for show that their masters care for them. And then, O swineherd Eumaeus, you said to him in answer. Every time he mentions Eumaeus, Homer can't keep himself from this cry of delight at this faithful man and his character. This is too true. It is the dog of a man who perished far away. If he were such in build and performance as when Odysseus left him behind when he went to Ilion, soon you would see his speed and his strength for yourself, etc., etc. But at that moment, we're told that the dog wags his tail and dies. His master comes home. He recognizes him. He doesn't have the strength to even crawl to him. Odysseus sees the dog recognizes him. The dog dies. Sad, painful. Anyone who has a dog moved by the recognition, seeing the bond between the animal and his master. But again, note that it's the lower of the lowest on the totem pole, the creatures that have been abandoned. He's been left to the dung heap. He was the great dog that Odysseus raised, his own dog which he loved, a great dog as well, the swiftest of all dogs. Now he can't move a muscle, and he's on the dung heap, and the ticks are eating away at him, and he sees his master. He wags his tail, he puts his ear back, and dies. So his identity revealed by the dog, by his nurse, and by his own wrath at the other beggar when he hit him a little bit too hard. Didn't do it on purpose. So he is showing his heroism by his thinking, by his humility, by his self-restraint, rather than simply through action. Now the time for action will come, but first he needs to master himself. It's one of the Proverbs, by the way. If you can't control he who controls his anger can control a city. Master, and this is Greek philosophical teaching, the greatest enemy is yourself. If you can control yourself, you can master others. But this is no simple task. But Odysseus is exemplifying this here. He's learning this, acting in accordance with what will become the Greek tradition of wisdom, best exemplified by the Stoics. So now we get the scene. He's built up to it, and they have the idea of how this is going to come about. Now, the final moment of revelation. By the way, we get the sense of almost Odysseus' revelation coming with judgment, which is very much a biblical theme. There may appear to be injustice. It may appear that God is indifferent or unseeing of the injustice that transpires, but one day there will be judgment, and it will be swift and it will be sure, and he sees everything, and it will come in the flash, right, in the blink of an eye, right when nobody's expecting it. Then there will be a revelation, and there will be punishment for evil and the reward of good. And that will happen here in this famous scene, which happens through another, I would say, indirect means. And what is the indirect means? It's the means that Penelope herself has established. It's the contest of the bow. Remember, she started by delaying the suitors by weaving this web, that's what it's called later, but a tapestry which she will bury her father with, a funeral shroud. She's going to give it for her not yet dead father-in-law. This is suitable. And then she unweaves it. Well, they've caught her in this. And she says, okay, it's been long enough. The man who can string Odysseus's bow, so the bow, if you've ever seen a bow, they don't sit with the string on them because of it. It breaks the bow. It ruins the effect, and also the tension on the string eventually breaks the. So you have to string it first, and to string a great bow, you have to bend it and throw the loop over it. It takes a great feat of strength just to string the bow, and then the contest is to shoot the arrow through. Is it 10 axe heads? And if you think about an axe head, right? So it's there and it's got a hole in it, in the wood. And then the metal goes through that, and then the axe comes out like that. But the hole so it's the wood, and they're stuck in the ground. And the man who should string that bow and shoot the arrow through the axe heads, that's the man I'll marry. And the last man who ever did that was Odysseus. He was the only one who was ever able to do that feat. But the man who does that, that's the man I'm going to marry. So the contest of the bow, the suitors are all there, and they're saying, okay, I can do this, right? And Odysseus is amongst them. Of course, he's not a suitor, and he is not invited to the contest of the bow. And I will skip forward here to where is this? The prophecy, it's in book 20, 345. Let me come to that. Is this right? Can this be right? But so I've got it in my notes, 345 to 57. I'll read it and we'll find out. So spoke Telemachus. In the suitors, Pallas Athena stirred up uncontrollable laughter and addled their thinking. Now they laughed with jaws that were no longer their own. The meat they ate was a mess of blood. Their eyes were bursting full of tears, and their laughter sounded like lamentation. Godlike Theoclymenos now spoke out among them. Poor wretches, what evil has come on you. Your heads and faces and the knees underneath you are shrouded in night and darkness. A sound of wailing is broken out. Your cheeks are covered with tears, and the walls bleed, and the fine supporting pillars, all the forecourt is huddled with ghosts, and the yard is full of them as they flock down to the underworld in the darkness. The sun has perished out of the sky, and a foul mist has come over. So he spoke, and all of them laughed happily at him. I don't know why they'd laugh at this. So this omen which has been spoken, but I'm trying to figure out, this is hysteria, and Theoclymenos then also utters a prophecy. Here it is, 367. I see the evil coming upon you, and not one of the suitors avoiding this will escape. For in the house of godlike Odysseus, you are outrageous to men, and all your designs are reckless. So a prophecy of what is about to come. Then the contest, I will get this here. So Penelope gets Odysseus' bow. Telemachus sets up the axes. This is book 21. And then they try and string the bow. Antinous first of all. No, Leodes, the first of them, disapproves of them. 147. Leodes was the first to take up the bow and the swift arrow now. He went then and tried the bow, standing on the threshold, and could not string it. Before that he ruined his soft, uncalloused hands, pulling at the string, and now he spoke to the suitors. His hands are bleeding because his hands are soft like mine. They're not tough from being out in the field. Friends, I cannot string this. Let one of the others take it. Here is a bow such as it will sunder many of the princes from life and soul, since truly it is far better to die than go on living and fail of that for whose sake we forever keep on gathering here all our days in expectation. Now a man may be hopeful and in his heart desirous of marrying Penelope, the wife of Odysseus, but when the bow has been attempted and all is made plain, then one must court some of the other fair-robed Achaean women and strive to win her with gifts of courtship. She will then marry the man she's fated to have and who brings her the greatest presents. He spoke, put the bow before him, leaning on the ground, and the rest of them then try. They take their turns, and the suitors all fail to a man. Odysseus asked for a try at the bow. Give me a try. They laugh at him. They mock him. They object. And they browbeat him. And Penelope rebukes them for the inhospitality of mocking one of their guests. Penelope is sent away by Odysseus. And now Odysseus, why does she send him away? Well, because he knows what's about to happen. Sends Penelope away because the slaughter is about to ensue. We're told, 4:10. I'll back it up, 4:04. Resourceful Odysseus, once he had taken up the great bow and looked it all over, as when a man, epic simile, who well understands the lyre and singing, easily holding it on either side, pulls the strongly twisted cord of sheep's gut so as to slip it over a new peg. So, without any strain, Odysseus strung the great bow. Then, plucking it in his right hand, he tested the bowstring, and it gave him back an excellent sound like the voice of a swallow. A great sorrow fell now upon the suitors, and all their color was changed. And Zeus, showing forth his portents, thundered mightily. Hearing this, long-suffering great Odysseus was happy that the son of devious devising Kronos had sent him a portent. So he chose out a swift arrow that lay beside him uncovered on the table, but the others were still stored up inside the hollow quiver, and presently the Achaeans must learn their nature. Taking the string and the head grooves, he drew to the middle grip, and from the very chair where he sat, bending the bow before him, let the arrow fly, nor missed any axes from the first handle on, for the bronze-weighted arrow passed through all and out the other end. Now, to do this, they have to be, so the arrows there, the axe heads are like this at a distance. It has to be entirely straight. Oops, that's unfortunate. It has to be entirely straight, so he has to shoot it with great velocity because it's not going to arc. Like with a bow, it has the trajectory. So he has not only pulled the bow, he's pulled it back so hot to go straight through the axes and not touch any of them. This is a feat. And at that point, now it's a bad time to drop the book.
It's page 320.
Thank you. That was a kindness. 320. Nor missed any axes from the first handle on, but the bronze-weighted arrow passed through all and out the other end. He spoke to Telemachus. Telemachus, your guest that sits in your halls does not then fail you. I missed no part of the mark. Nor have I made such much work of the stringing of the bow. The strength is still sound within me. And not as the suitors said in their scorn, making little of me. Now is the time for their dinner to be served, the Achaeans, in the daylight. Then follow with the other entertainment, the dance and the lyre, for these things come at the end of their feasting. He spoke and nodded to him with his brows. And Telemachus, dear son of godlike Odysseus, put his sharp sword about him and closed his own hand over his spear and took his position close beside him and next the chair, all armed in bright bronze. Now, he's at the door. He's barred the door. He's taken away their weapons. The only weapons in there belong to Odysseus and Telemachus. And now the slaughter begins. And it is a bloody slaughter. Now, I will not read that passage, not because I don't delight in it, but for the sheer lack of time. Book 22. Everyone delights in this, by the way. Don't tell me it's not, or maybe I'm just perverse. But he is going to tell the slaughter ensues. And then the maids are punished for their ill deeds. Justice is done for the injustice that has been sued. There's a sort of a purging of the injustice in their midst. Now, this is a sort of a moral judgment. It's a moral judgment of the gods. The gods themselves decreed it. The gods themselves executed it. There will be justice among men, and Odysseus will be restored. When that has come, there's a final moment of revelation. Now, the final moment is when Penelope is now going to be reunited to his wife. Where is this? This is book 23. He's killed all the slaughter. It's obvious who he is. It's the one who's strung the bow. The prophecies are fulfilled. What does Penelope do when she sees this man who says that he's her husband? What does she do? She doesn't believe him. She still can't believe him. She comes down to him and she tests him. Eurycleia says, I found this man, and she says it's Odysseus. She doesn't believe her either. She will not believe any of them. She says this, 59, you know how welcome he would be if he, Odysseus, appeared in the palace to all, but above all to me and the son we gave birth to. No, this story is not true as you tell it. Rather, one of the immortals has killed the haughty suitors in anger over their wicked deeds and heart-hurting violence, and these men paid no attention to any man on earth who came their way, no matter if they were base or noble. So they suffered for their own recklessness, but Odysseus has lost his homecoming and lost his life far from Achaea. And Eurycleia can't believe it, that she still will not trust. Then Odysseus will speak to her, and she will not trust him either. And finally, he absolutely loses it, Odysseus, because she is more circumspect and more restrained than he is. Like, finally, Odysseus can't cope with it, and she puts him to the test. She says, if you can find where my bed, what it was the test, it's the bed test.
Something about how he made his bed.
Yeah, and they moved the bed, and he says, woman, how on earth could they possibly have moved the bed? Because I myself built the bed on the stump of a tree, and nobody could move that stump. It's made out of a stump of a tree that could not be moved. And she says, now I know it's you. That was the test. Only you and I knew this. And at that point, he breaks down, she breaks down, and they embrace one another and so forth. So a final moment of revelation of identity connected with his past identity, pulling the present, a moment of pain, and they are reunited. And I'll conclude with that. I have to for the sake of time. Sorry, I ran out of time. But I shall see you next time.